you remember the taste of strawberries?
I can see him with my waking eyes.
Then let us be rid of it. Once and for all. Come on, Mr. Frodo. I can't carry it for you. But I can carry you. Come on!
Hope shines into the dark fantasy genre like a beam of light through a narrow curtain into a darkened room. Hope is that extra, refreshing fragrance that you add to your dark fantasy campaign that makes it feel meaningful and immersive and keeps your players coming back week after week to keep telling the story that you're all creating together. Hope is what makes your dark fantasy campaign meaningful. Hello, my name is Byrne, and this is what you need to know about maintaining hope in your dark fantasy D&D campaign. Dark fantasy is often confused with horror or grimdark, two genres it definitely shares a lot of similarities with. It is most often conflated with the grimdark genre, which provides no hope for a better tomorrow. It is a completely nihilistic setting which the campaign would take place in if it was a grimdark campaign. The word grimdark comes out of a description of the 41st millennium, the setting for the Warhammer 40k universe, which itself was initially conceived to be a parody of dark fantasy-like tales. Dark fantasy borrows a lot from the horror genre as well to build tension and remind players that the world in which their characters exist is dangerous. But horror's main priority as a genre is to terrify and cause despair within the player characters, and many characters don't make it out of a horror story alive. And if they do, there's usually some terrible twist at the end, which means their fate is sealed beyond the end of the story being told. Dark fantasy is dark, but it's not pitch black. There should be hope that the player characters can leave the world in which they exist brighter tomorrow than it was today. And this is what's going to keep your players coming back week after week to tell the compelling tale that you're all weaving together. It's difficult for me to give a concise list of things that you can do while preparing for your D&D campaign that infuses your dark fantasy story with a sense of hope. But I can list out 4 things that you should keep in mind that can help keep hope alive within the grim darkness of your campaign setting. And they are as follows. Number 1, always allow for the possibility of success. Dark fantasy isn't completely nihilistic, and there is a potential that the player characters will come out achieving a brighter future. Number 2, don't be afraid to have fun and infuse your campaign with comedy and laughter. There is brightness in dark fantasy. Number 3, plan for or insert circuit breaker sessions into your campaign where the players can kind of relax a little bit and the world doesn't seem so dark all the time. And number 4, remember the themes of dark fantasy that provide hope. And this isn't so much a step to prepare for, but just keeping in mind the sort of themes that you want to explore within your campaign that keep the player characters invested. I've talked in the past about how dark fantasy stories don't often end with everybody happy. And I've also talked about how realms that have a dark fantasy setting are dangerous and that the monsters therein pose a significant threat not just to the NPCs, but the player characters that exist within that world. But in neither circumstance did I necessarily mean that dark fantasy campaigns always end miserably, or that death is an inevitability for the player characters because some monster will eventually get them. Hope for success is what keeps your player characters invested in your campaign. Dungeons & Dragons is, after all, a game, and the players should be able to affect the world and influence the outcome of the story. Otherwise, as is the age-old adage, the Dungeon Master may as well just be writing a novel if the outcome of the story is inevitable in their minds. An inevitable utter defeat makes the players feel like there's no point in joining in on the campaign. If they don't see the world changing and improving due to their actions, then they might become disengaged and feel like there's no reason for them to keep struggling within the context of the campaign world because their characters aren't improving or affecting anything.
But there's no happy endings, not here
not now. This tale is all sorrows and woes.
There should always be the possibility for success. But that doesn't mean in a dark fantasy context that the player characters shouldn't have to struggle or sacrifice to achieve the success that they're targeting, or that their definition of success doesn't change because of the way the world pushes back against their actions.
Well, I'm going through a little bit of a rough patch. A whole year, actually.
Being a game and not a pre-written novel, the player characters might fail, they might all die and get chewed on by some grisly monster, but they might get that perfect happy ending if they put enough effort and the dice rolls go their way. The player characters might all be killed by some horrible monster, or they may achieve some perfect absolute victory over the evil that plagues the realm. Neither are entirely likely within a dark fantasy campaign, and somewhere in the middle is what you're aiming for. The player characters can affect the world, they can achieve some level of success, but it just might not be perfect or what they had in mind initially. So therefore, it becomes important to define success within your dark fantasy campaign with your players. Are they trying to restore the rightful king to a throne by leading rebels in a violent civil war, resulting in a lot of deaths of innocent people? Are they trying to save the city from a violent dragon, despite the fact that they're going to have to either pay off the beast and drain the city coffers significantly, or kill this ancient, beautiful creature? Is success for your party just saving that one innocent life, that individual that was born a sorcerer, or perhaps they were bitten by a werewolf and now they're being hunted and you're their only hope for survival? I'm going to provide spoilers for Castlevania Season 1 or 2, which if you haven't watched it already, it's on Netflix, go check it out. It's amazing inspiration for a dark fantasy D&D campaign. But the reason I want to spoil this is because it highlights what I'm talking about. At the end of Season 2, the big bad evil guy of that story, Dracula himself, has been defeated, his soul cast into hell, he has been destroyed. But it's cost our heroes so much. Our player characters, in this case, Trevor Belmont, Cypher Belnades, and Alucard, have almost died in the effort that it took them to slay Dracula. And now that he's gone, there's hope for the future of humanity, and there's hope for that world in which this story takes place. But Dracula was Alucard's father. The final scene of Season 2 is Alucard sitting in his father's office, the very man they just killed, crying in his grief for the loss of his family. Light streams in through the window, communicating that there is hope for the future, but Alucard is still grieving for what he has lost. And this highlights perfectly how hope exists within a dark fantasy story. Yes, there is hope for a brighter tomorrow, but what's going to be sacrificed in the effort to achieve it? Part of dark fantasy's reputation as a boring, no fun genre of D&D is this misconception that jokes and laughter are unwelcome 100% of the time.
I am dead inside.
And this is often why dark fantasy gets conflated with the grimdark genre, where
this is a serious campaign and it should be taken seriously all the time.
But even that is intended as a parody of dark fantasy rather than to be taken seriously itself. That makes sense. On the contrary, moments of joy and laughter and levity are welcome into the dark fantasy genre because it's moments of joy that make us feel connected to the player characters. It'll make your players feel more connected to the NPCs and to the story itself if they enjoy their time playing within your campaign.
You know what? This isn't that bad.
Speaking of Castlevania, and no spoilers this time, I promise, but it is legitimately one of the funniest dark fantasy TV shows I've ever seen. And it's because the rapport between the three main characters is really strong and really fun to watch, especially the way that Trevor and Alucard just constantly trash each other.
Fortunate indeed, then, that I chose not to kill you and eat you, Belmont.
And that I decided against gutting you, flaying you, and turning you into shoes, Alucard.
I will find us a covered wagon and horses if you two can manage not to kill each other while I'm gone.
Oh, please. We're not children.
I feel connected to the characters because of the fun that I have with them in those moments of levity. And so it makes me feel way more pathos for them when moments of tragedy or sadness strike. Moments of joy and humor can also contrast in that way with the darker moments from your dark fantasy campaign. They make the dark moments feel more tragic because they're contrasted like a shadow against the brightness of the fun, joyous moments. Let your players have fun.
A day.
That took me a bit by surprise.
This has been a day.
Crack jokes, lean into the non sequiturs that happen in your campaign when you misspeak. I got absolutely torn apart once for saying tree bucket instead of trebuchet because I wasn't sure exactly how that word was pronounced. So there became this running gag that there was an NPC that called them tree buckets all the time. Just the trick is knowing the moments when to lean into the comedy and when to take the more serious atmosphere seriously, when to honor the feeling of darkness that might exist within your campaign.
What are you going to do to the stone?
When the big bad evil guy appears and does something that's legitimately terrible, leaning into those feelings of tragedy, grief, or hatred, rather than feeling the need to tear apart the atmosphere with glib jokes. Knowing the difference between those two is kind of the artistry of spinning a dark fantasy story. So create funny NPCs yourself. Crack jokes. Don't be afraid of humor within your campaign. Entertain your player characters as much as thrill them. Don't feel like you have to have a 100% serious tone 100% of the time. It's more like, I don't know, 70-30. Flavor it to your specific taste. Furthermore, some of the best dark fantasy villains are those that can be simultaneously hilarious and also terrifying.
We are tonight's entertainment. I only have one question. Where is Harvey Dent?
Can't be too careful with all those weirdos walking around.
Darkness, tragedy, death.
All of the time becomes exhausting. As I've just mentioned, talking about infusing your campaign with comedy, if you exhaust your players on constantly dark themes, they might not want to continue playing within the campaign. And so one technique that I've devised that you can definitely throw into your campaigns is having what I call a circuit breaker session. A session that's basically meant to come into the campaign at a point where the players need a bit of a refresher. Their characters might need to consolidate themselves, or you might have had a long stretch period where really bad things keep happening.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently. That's okay. Things are gonna be okay.
Big bad evil villain keeps on getting their way despite the player's best attempts at stopping them. Things are getting really dark. It's darkest before the dawn, that sort of thing within the context of the campaign, and the players just need a break. Let's throw in a circuit breaker session. Circuit breaker sessions don't have to be comedy sessions, and that's why this is kind of a different step to take from inserting comedy into your campaign. They're just something that provides relief. They're not a dark fantasy tragedy session. They're something where the player characters either get to talk to a funny NPC, and it is comedy, it is kind of light, or it's just something where the player characters get to relax for a session, or just go out and kill a monster that's unambiguously evil. Even that can just be enough.
How's that for road rash?
Where the players don't have to think about what is this monster's background, who were its parents, what does it want, what is it trying to protect, are we the bad guys for killing this thing? So some ideas for circuit breaker sessions. Let me look. You could have a shopping session where you have a traveling merchant of rare and exotic goods who has all these...
Look at this. Yes. Combination hookah and coffee maker. Also makes chili and fries.
uncommon and rare magic items that they'll sell to the player characters. Even if it's not a human. I've had Fae, traveling merchants that use dinosaurs as their pack animals, just emerge out of this complete wilderness jungle, and the player characters are like, where did you come from? And the Fae creature's like,
where'd I come from? I live in this jungle. Where did you come from?
You can also have downtime sessions, just sessions where the paladin and the cleric have time to go to their temple, reaffirm their vows and pray to their deity and regain the hope that they need that fuels the fire of their divine spellcasting. Or a session where the players are in a city or a village and you as the DM just ask them, what do you want to do? This is a session where nothing is immediately threatening the party. Do you want to go to the local tavern and gather rumors or just drink and eat? Do you want to go and see a show, a performance? Do you want to put on a performance? Are you giving them a challenge that isn't necessarily life and death? Can be a great circuit breaker session. To be honest, circuit breaker sessions can sometimes be the most memorable of your campaign. They give the players a chance to deepen their connection with their characters or deepen their connection with each other if they get to roleplay off each other.
I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them.
Your circuit breaker session could just be a session where the player characters are taking a long rest and swapping stories from their background around the fireplace. This last piece of advice is to just think about the hope-filled themes that you want to feature within your dark fantasy campaign. There are a million different ways that you could feature these themes within your specific campaign, and each of them represent a glimmer of hope that gives the story that you and your players are telling meaning. You can talk about these themes with your players in a session 0. You don't have to try to hide the themes for your players to discover, because this can lead to them kind of guessing at what you want their characters to learn during the campaign. You're not necessarily trying to teach the players or the characters anything over the course of playing the game. You're just playing a game and telling a story together. But keeping these themes in mind helps you infuse hope into your dark fantasy campaign, because if all of these themes are absent, then it means that maybe the campaign's getting a little too grimdark. So thinking about things like sacrifice. Sacrifice for a greater good is a massive theme of dark fantasy, and you can feature it by asking the player characters what they're willing to sacrifice to stop the plans of the big bad evil villain. You can also use this theme to demonstrate the wickedness of your big bad evil villain, the lives of others, or the future of a certain city that needs to pay a lot of gold to a big bad evil dragon. Yeah, I know. Get some new ideas, Ben. Get some fresh material, for dragon's sake. Redemption is possibly one of the biggest hope-providing themes in a dark fantasy world, and this can be applied to the player characters themselves. Maybe your paladin starts the campaign with evil in their hearts, and their oath is taken because they're on a path to try to redeem deeds that they did before they took their holy vows. Perseverance is a huge theme in dark fantasy because defeat needn't be the end. While the players suffer some horrible defeat at the hands of the big bad evil villain early on, can they persevere through that to come out the other side of their hardship stronger and seek revenge or redemption against the villain afterwards? Forgiveness, or the lack thereof, is a huge theme of dark fantasy. Can the player characters forgive the villain for what they've done, or can the player characters forgive themselves for what they've done? Darth Vader does some horrible things, and he is punished for those because of his death at the end of the story. He doesn't get away with what he's done, but Luke chooses the light side, chooses to forgive him rather than fight and kill his father at the end of that story. It's what makes a Jedi, is persevering with love rather than continuing a cycle of hate. Consequences for our actions can be both good and bad, and this can be a theme of hope, or it can also be a theme of tragedy, because maybe some terrible consequence that the player characters didn't foresee happens as a result of their actions. But keeping your players invested in your dark fantasy campaign is allowing them to see the positive consequences that their actions have in the campaign world. They stop the dragon from burning down the village. Yes, here's the dragon again. And as a result, they are thanked by the city, and they have commoners coming and praising their name for helping save the day. And finally, love. Love is the biggest theme of hope. I thought it was redemption, but it's not. It's love. It's the biggest theme of hope within dark fantasy. Tragedy is born out of love.
I've always been alone, so I don't feel the lack. It's all I've ever known. I've never experienced loss because I've never had a loved one to lose. But what is grief, if not love persevering?
Love can exist in a D&D campaign world as dark as your dark fantasy campaign setting is the biggest ray of hope of all. So let it exist within your D&D campaign. If nothing else, allow love to burn within your D&D campaign like a single flame of a candle burning in a dark room. And that's it. This has been the video on featuring hope within your dark fantasy D&D campaign. I hope you enjoyed this video. We got quite a few requests for it in the comments on our previous dark fantasy campaign videos, which you can find here. Leave us a comment down below. Do you think that hope is vital for your dark fantasy D&D campaign? How do you feature hope within your D&D campaigns? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to follow along, because we're going to be back next week with more to say on how to run Dungeons & Dragons.